Hello, first graders. Welcome to our read aloud, our second day of our read aloud. Again, we are reading The Year of Billy Miller by Kevin Hangus. And then we are going to be moving on to chapter 3 today. Yesterday in chapters 1 and 2, we were introduced into Billy Miller and how he became nervous about the second grade. We also met Mama and Papa and his sister Sal. We met Ned on the sidewalk as they were on their way to school, and we learned that Ned also calls Papa Papa, just because Ned growing up thought that that was his name and not that a dad name in a sense. And we had just left off that they were, Billy was nervous or embarrassed to go to school with their parents walking behind them. So him and Ned sped up past them, and they had just gotten to school and they were entering room 2. Chapter 3. Mrs. Silver had chopsticks in her hair. That was the first thing Billy noticed about her. Her wavy blonde hair was coiled into a bun and held in place with 2 shiny red chopsticks. Billy's parents liked to eat with chopsticks sometimes, but he'd never seen chopsticks on someone's head before. Without thinking, Billy whispered, "Chop, chop," as he filed past her. Miss Silver just smiled at him. But then, she seemed to be smiling at everyone. Even Ned, who asked, "How many days of school until summer vacation?" There were 6 tables with 4 chairs, each arranged around them. "Look for the place with your name," said Mrs. Silver. "When you find your place, you may sit down." "Here's my seat," said Ned. He pulled out his chair and plopped into it. Then he patted the tabletop next to him. "Sit here," he told Billy. It made sense that he would be next to Ned. After all, they were neighbors and best friends. Maybe Miss Silver knew that they were friends. Billy sat down without looking at the name tag at his place. Billy felt a breath on top of his head. He turned around. Standing too close was a girl he didn't recognize. Her eyes were narrowed to slits. Her arms were crossed, and her fingers were drumming on her elbows at a rapid-fire pace. "Excuse me?" she said. "You're sitting at my place." She paused. "Unless your name is Emma Sparks too, then we have a problem." The girl stepped aside to let Billy get up. "If your name is Billy Miller, you sit there," she said, pointing. "If your name is Grace Cotter, you sit there," she pointed again. "He must be Ned Henderson," she continued, nodding. And then she pointed once more, this time at Billy. "I have a feeling you're Billy Miller." Everything about the girl made it seem to Billy that she should be at least a 3rd grader. She talked like an adult. She walked like an adult. She wore her sweater tied around her waist, which for some reason seemed very adult. Billy shuffled around the table to his spot, kitty corner from Ned. Grace Cotter slipped into her chair. Billy had known Grace since kindergarten. She was so shy, she seemed almost invisible, like vacuums. Her wide eyes were sucking in everything. When the 4 of them had settled into their proper places, Emma Sparks smiled an enormous smile. "My nickname's Emster," she told them. "You can call me Emster." Billy misheard her. "Hamster?" he said, in a voice much too loud. "Your name is Hamster?" Everyone laughed. The laughter was pleasing to Billy. It gave him a tingle. Whispers of hamster rippled throughout the classroom. Emma glared at him. "I said Emster. Emster." All of a sudden, there was a noise, like a single penetrating toll of the bell. The laughter quieted. Silence, except for the resonant sound. So they could still hear the bell go, "Hoo," Miss Silver stood at front of the room beside her desk holding a paddled hammer. There was a small bronze gong at the counter of the desk. "Thank you," she said in a hushed tone. "Whenever you hear the gong, it means I'd like your attention. So I'll show you anytime there's little pictures in the story. There isn't a lot. It's mostly just words. But here's the gong with the little mallet next to it. A little hammer for her to hit the gong gently. Billy had known a teacher with a gong. It worked like magic. The room was noiseless. Still. Miss Silver talked about herself for a while, and Billy's mind wandered. The next thing he knew, Ned was kicking him under the table. Say your name and something about yourself, Ned whispered. I'm Billy Miller, Billy said. And He couldn't think of anything to say. I'm in 2nd grade. There were giggles. But the students weren't giggling at Billy. They were giggling because they thought what he said was funny. A good, warm feeling came over him. But not everyone thought he was funny. Emma looked at him, rolled her eyes, and said, "You're so dumb." The good, warm feeling vanished. Later, when the students were writing and drawing in their journals, Emma said to Billy, "Maybe you should write that in your 2nd grade so you don't forget." Billy took 2 red markers from the bin in the table. Using both hands, he held up the markers on his head, as if they were the fiery horns of a devil. Then he stared at Emma with the meanest expression he could manage. Miss Silver happened to be walking by just then. She stopped and looked at Billy for a long moment. Billy froze for a few seconds, then lowered his hands and dropped the markers back into the bin. Miss Silver raised one of her hands to her chopsticks. She frowned. Then she smoothed her hair and walked away. "Keep working, everyone," she said. "Oh, no," Billy whispered. It dawned on him Mrs. Silver thought he was making fun of her. She thought that the 2 red markers were meant to be her 2 red chopsticks. She thought that the ugly face he'd made at Emma was an imitation of her, Mrs. Silver. Billy didn't know what to do. What he wanted to do was run around the playground. Running always made him feel better. But he couldn't do that. So, in his journal, he drew a picture of a hamster and wrote, "Hamsters smell bad." Chapter 4. Sal and the Drop Sisters were sitting in the row on the front porch steps. "I'm waiting for you," Sal called to Billy as he turned into the yard. "Well, I'm here," said Billy. "You can stop waiting." I can't stop thinking about how his first day went. He was so nervous about going to school, and now he thinks that he's upset the teacher, or that he thinks that the teacher feels bad about his drawing that he did. And, Emster isn't getting on the best with him. He's having such a hard time at school with her very much, but at least he's got his best friend Ned in his class. Sorry, I will continue with chapter 4. I know that was random, but my brain just couldn't stop thinking about it, and I just wanted to talk to you about it. I wonder if you've ever felt that way about classmates, where sometimes you don't necessarily get along with them, and they always kind of push your buttons a little bit, or they do things to make you a little mad. I wonder how you handle things. He says he runs to make him feel better, or he draws in his journal. I usually try to just ignore them because I know that they're just doing it to make me mad. And then I also like to write in my journal or sing a little tune or hum something to myself to try to block out anything they're trying to say to me. Let me go back to chapter 4. Sal and the Drop Sisters were sitting in the row on the front porch steps. "I'm waiting for you," Sal called to Billy as he turned to the yard. "Well, I'm here," said Billy. "You can stop waiting." Papa came around the house from the garage carrying a battered cello with only 2 strings. "Hi, Billy," he said. "Hi, Papa." "How was school?" asked Papa. "Okay," said Billy. "What did you do?" "Nothing." "Give me one highlight from your day," said Papa. Billy was used to Papa probing, although he didn't particularly like it. "There's a kid named Hamster in my class," he said. "Boy or girl?" asked Papa. "Girl." "Maybe her parents are celebrities," said Papa. "They often give their kids unusual names." "Huh?" said Billy. Nothing, said Papa. Do your parents ask a lot of questions when you get home from school? Sometimes I know my mom did, just because she was kind of bored herself and she just wanted to know more about what I did all day. How is Miss Silver? Billy shrugged. An image of Mrs. Silver's disappointed face rose up in her mind. He did not want to talk about her, although he knew his father would think that her chopsticks were very interesting. Can we not have any more questions? Asked Billy. No more questions, said Papa. Sal, who had been unusually silent, stood with her hands on her hips and said, Your school doesn't sound very fun. My school with Papa was more fun. Look what I can do. Sal bent over and grabbed a book from a stack on the porch. I can read Mama's favorite book, she said. She held up a worn paperback copy of Pride and Prejudice, which is a very big book for older kids, and older adults, and typically a big kid kind of book. Bigger than this one. And Billy said, You can't read that book. The book was definitely for adults. Yes, I can, said Sal. Watch, I know the words A and I. She opened the book to the first chapter, her finger scanning across the lines down the page. A. She paused. There's an I. She flipped the page. Now her finger darted around. A. I. She slapped the book shut and beamed. That was just 2 pages. But I can even read in the hundreds. She opened the book again, this time to page 223. See? She said. I. A. That's not really reading, said Billy. Is so, said Sal. A is a word, and I is a word. She looked at Papa. Well, said Papa, it is reading, in a way. He wiggled his eyebrows at Billy. He was still holding a dilapidated cello. He plucked one of the 2 strings, making a dull, heavy sound. And this is making music. He plucked again. Ding. In a way. Billy laughed. I found the cello today among other treasures. Come to the garage. I'll show you. Me too, said Sal. She gathered the Drop Sisters into her pillowcase. I'm going to teach the girls to read, Sal told Billy. I'm teaching Raindrop first. She's the smartest. Billy followed Papa, and Sal followed Billy into the garage. Papa's treasures for the day included a cello, an old-fashioned telephone with a dial, and a long curly cord, a gnarled piece of driftwood that looked like an elephant, and a shiny silver garden ball on a cement pedestal. We went to the dump, said Sal. Billy realized that if he had spent the day with Papa, he would have had much more fun than he did at school. Does any of this speak to you? Papa said. He rotated the driftwood in his hands, eyeing it critically. Any ideas how your old Papa could turn these lovely bits of rummage into art? He placed the driftwood at his feet, then rubbed to the silver garden ornament, as if it were a crystal ball. Let's look into the future, said Papa. Billy and Sal leaned closer. What do you see? Asked Papa, joking, stroking his beard. Billy didn't see the future, but he could have. He would have liked to... But if he could have, he would have liked to see Emma move to a different table at school. And he would have liked Mrs. Silver to let him know, somehow, that she wasn't mad at him. I see me, said Sal. She touched her nose to the silver globe, then drew her face back a bit. She repeated this movement several times, mesmerized by her distorted reflection. I like the silver ball best, she said, before she kissed her reflection. I like the telephone best, said Billy, but he didn't have any suggestions for how Papa could turn it into art. It would be fun to take it apart. He was fascinated by seeing the internal works of things, the wires, the gears, the nuts and bolts. You should like the silver ball best, Sal told Billy. It's silver, just like Miss Silver. You should give it to her. Then you would be her favorite. Billy didn't care about being Miss Silver's favorite, but he did care that she thought he'd been rude to her. Billy offered no response to Sal's comment, but because of them, he experienced the first flicker of an idea of how to make things right with Mrs. Silver. Ned came over, and he and Billy took apart the telephone with Papa's help. And Billy's idea was forming. Mama came home, and she asked even more questions about second grade than Papa had. Billy's answers stayed nearly the same. Okay, and nothing, and I don't know. Billy's idea continued to form during dinner and throughout the evening. By the time he went to bed, he had a plan. And that's the end of chapter 4. So that's where we're going to leave off today, first graders. I hope you enjoyed today's read aloud. Have a fantastic day.